Okay, let's have another game on the 15-minute auto pairing. Taking a while to get a game. Who's on? It's title players on 51. Dark Ocean. Who's Dark Ocean top seed today? Ah, okay. GAPE. Maybe a Sicilian dragon or something. Ah, so bishop c4. Quick d5 strike. Bit of a fast tempo here, but I think d5 is logical enough. I think, okay, so bishop e7 or d4. Bishop e7 might be walking into bishop g5 and d5 pressure. What about just d4? Knight e4, that's not, I don't think that's too big of a problem, big problem. Okay, interesting dilemma. D4, knight e2, let's say. There might be knight d5 in the future. Or bishop e7. I think bishop e7, bishop g5, I've got d4 anyway. Do I need to play anything more aggressive? I'm not really sure. I'm confused now with this position actually. Bishop e7, is that not making the most out of something? I could just be content for simple development. I could play bishop d6. No, that's terrible for bishop g5 probably. Or d4, just in case. I'll play d4. I'll weaken the light squares. That's the big problem. I'm weakening light squares. But if I can play bishop e7 and knight d5 in the future, maybe even bishop e6 and share the f file, then I'll get rid of that bishop and get f file pressure. Get a nice knight on d5. If he plays knight e4, okay, what's the problem with this? Take. He's still got two pawn islands. I can play bishop d6. I don't walk into any pins. Knight e2 on the other hand. Bishop e2. Let's say knight f3. Bishop g4. Knight g3. I've got some light square weaknesses to contend with. Getting rid of this bishop might be important. Looks like a passive structure a little bit, but this bishop's outside the chain. What about a bishop e6 immediately? So he takes. I can play bishop d6, queen c7, castle queenside, use the f file. That might be quite aggressive. Unless he pounces on e6 pretty quickly. He could do with knight f4 after that. Unless knight d5 followed by bishop e6, then queen d7, then castle queenside. Knight e2, knight d5, knight f4 puts a spanner in the works. But otherwise, if he lets me off with bishop e6, then a future knight f4 I can take and take on a2. On that variation, if bishop f4, so the question here then is knight e2, knight d5, is that any good? Knight f4, knight takes f4, bishop takes f4, bishop e7 should be about equal. It's using up a lot of time here. What else to consider? Okay, I think I'll go with this because this is a potential pass pawn actually. This d pawn. There's no bishop f7s or queen h5s. I'll just try and just castle and maybe challenge the bishop pretty soon with bishop e6. Maybe here. otherwise it's potentially dangerous bishop. Ah, that's a misplaced rook, surely. And I can start to work on this D pawn now. So maybe bishop c5 or d3 straight off the bat. Maybe it's a bit weak, the pawn. But there's bishop c5 check and knight d4. Or bishop c5 check. Right, now this pawn is in trouble. Knight d4, queen d3. Probably the pawn's in trouble. Queen h4, queen d3. No, I've got to protect the pawn. So how? Queen d7? I think that looks good. Queen d7. Doesn't run into knight f5. Play rook d8, bishop b6 soon. Now that's a good pass pawn. Now knight d4. Okay, f6 might be troublesome. f6, queen b3. I can move the king, get a good grip on e5, stop f6s from white. I think I want to move the king and play knight e5, or just knight e5 straight off the bat here. With tempo. What's he threatening? What about queen b5, just start to put the pressure on. Knight h5, there's rook f7s. b4, maybe bishop d4. Anything sharper? It's queen d4 with bishop c3, queen e3. g5 is pretty sharp. Takes, and try and use the h file. g5, interesting. Knight on e5 is pretty beautiful though. Do I want to extend the scope of the rook? Queen b5, let's go back to this. b4, bishop d4. Queen d4 bishop c3, but queen, I don't know, gets rid of my e5 knight, which is nice. Bishop d4, is there bishop b4? Rook f7. Coming out to g5 now again. g5. Okay. What to do with this pawn? It's blockaded. I want to unblockade the pawn in principle. Something like bishop d4 to test the water here. Hitting b2 straight off the bat. And then maybe rook c8 to c2, trying to lift the blockader. Pawn's lust to expand, as Fisher said. Now what's this b2 offering? I don't understand that. Is it a trap? Rook b1, it's protected. Bishop b4, there's rook f7. Can take another pawn. Knight's beautiful on e5 for the moment. I'll try and get in rook c8 to c2 if nothing else. Bishop b4, anything stronger than rook f7? Rook f7 just guards g7 just in case he wants to attack that later. Play it now. I suppose there's rook f3 coming up. There's king h8, rook h3. Oh no, hang on. I can just take. Do I need to do anything yet? Can I not just take on a3 to be greedy? I just take on a3. Advantage. Any advantage? Or just rook c8. Taking on a3 stops bishop b4's. It's got some use to it as well as material. So go back with oh, knight d5 is on the card, so I can sack the exchange or something. Queen c6. Let's get rid of that nasty knight. I'm on c1, so there's no rook c1. There's knight e6 as well. I'll just take on e4. Mind you, no, knight e6 protects. So g5 here looks good. Get rid of the oh, f6 could drop. Let's take with this pawn. That removes e6 as a square. There's knight d5. King g7, but there's queen h6s. Alright. There's queen d4, here's knight e6. Can I start moving these pawns, or these pawns are pretty useless, are they? It's got a blockade. Knight c4 might lift the blockade. If I can just take on d2 and play bishop b4. I can defend against this thing first, I think. Just sack the exchange. Knight e6 I'll just take and get the pawn. Keep my beautiful knight on e5. So I expect knight d5, not knight e6 if he doesn't want me to sack the exchange. Oh, his king. Oh, his king's so weak after that. Just queen d4 surely. He's not protecting e4 at all. Beautiful central queen, just hitting e4 with tempo. That's just a sure way to lose. Statistically, when I play g4, just losing a move like that, usually it's a very bad idea. So here is the exception, or knight c4 looks dangerous, hitting the bishop with tempo, hitting e4. If knight e6 I just take and the knight takes d2. So bishop moves rook e4. It looks as though white's crumbling. My bishop's even on e7 here. So there's knight takes e4 for white. Threatens d2 among other things. g5, is that a threat, really? There's still d2 and knight f2. I think just knight e4. g5, no, I don't believe it. I think just d2. Okay, he's on e4 for a moment, but d2 here. Queening. Right, interesting. So just queen g1, and then there's takes and there's rook f3, there's all sorts of stuff. Queen g1, queen d3 looks pretty convincing. Queen d3 will pick up a rook. After queen g3 I can just take. He's resigned. What's 2060 now? Yeah, I hope you got something from that. Maybe I was a bit optimistic with d pawn at this stage, pushing that through. I love the knight on e5. Yeah, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks so much.